I'm sitting here with Paul Lohr. This is John McEuen on the Americana Music Show. Paul Lohr is a guy that is called an agent. And I think it was his wife that came up with the phrase of what a group of agents is called. That's a crock of agents. And
that would be the collective noun.
And the agent world is something that, this is kind of a behind the scenes for the Americana Music Show on syndicatednews.net. Paul, you've been an agent for how long?
Making a living at it since 1984. But I was the guy who always did the business for our garage bands and college bands. Even when I graduated from college and had a hobby band, I was the guy who was out there getting the bookings.
Were you in the group?
I was in the group, yes.
When did you finally decide that you wanted to be an agent? Because it's a strange time. Something has to happen when you go, I like this side of the box office.
I saw a group that was so amazing that it depressed me beyond belief, and I said, this is incredible. There's people like this out here playing this well, and I turned to my bandmates. We actually went on a scouting mission to check out this band, and I turned to them and said, you know what? We suck. We're terrible. This guy. So I walked up to him at the end of the show and said, introduced myself to him and said, hi, I'm your new agent. And it kind of went from there.
Well, what was the group?
The Johnny Neal Band from Wilmington, Delaware.
What kind of bookings could you get them then?
It was club bookings. We worked in the Mid-Atlantic region, I guess from Virginia up to, even the Northeast, up to Maine. It was kind of the...
Well, this is the late 80s. How did you find your database of clubs?
Oh, that was early 80s.
Oh. And
then realized that I was only going to go so far in Wilmington, Delaware, being an agent. I said, I have to get to a music center if I'm going to do anything.
What was the first one, music center?
I went to Nashville.
Now, Paul, would you say that being an agent is an on-the-job training only kind of situation? Or, because there's kids out there that love show business but don't want to be on stage, they want to be involved somehow. Do you go to school, or is the best school doing it?
Oh, it's definitely a OJT. And
on-the-job training, I see.
Yeah. And like many fields, it's all about relationships and building trust and rapport with the folks that you're working with. And the only way you're going to build that is over time.
How did you find the Dixie Chicks?
Well,
Paul Lohr is running an agency called New Frontier, and New Frontier Touring, actually. He happens to be my agent, and when he called me and asked if I wanted to be represented by him, I said, well, sure. Let me call my previous agent and let him know. And that came because of what he just said, relationships. Paul was, for many years, pursuing the agency world. He got to the top of the game, some people might say, representing Garth Brooks and Dixie Chicks and people like that. How did you come across the Dixie Chicks?
A friend of mine, in fact, one of the first guys I met when I moved to Nashville and had known for a few years subsequently, ran into them when he was down in Texas. Might have been at South by Southwest or something like that. But he came back and he said, I saw a band. And he's in publishing, so he wasn't in the booking. But he said, I saw a band that I think is right up your alley. And he actually was thinking about the Riders in the Sky, who I've worked with for over 20 years. And the Dixie Chicks at the time were a quartet, and they referred to themselves as a little old cowgirl band from Texas, and Nightingales of the Prairie. He thought maybe they could be a female Riders in the Sky. However, once I met them and saw them and we agreed to work together, half the band and I thought differently. And so there was a transition that came about, because what they really wanted to be was more of a cross between they wanted to be popular and appealing to a broader market than just a niche artist, and they said, "Hey, we want to have the reach of a Reba McEntire, but maybe the critical acclaim or hip factor of an Emmylou Harris. And the two other gals in the band at the time, they thought, we want to be more of a Celtic, roots bluegrass kind of thing. So when it came out that there was two distinctly different visions for the band, then it started. One of them left, and the other eventually was decided that it wasn't going to be where she wanted to go as well, and then the Irwin sisters teamed up with this gal named Natalie Maines, and the rest was history.
Now, this is an example of how people trying to make it in the music business, you can't just do it by yourself. It takes a village. It takes several villages to make that little village happen, in my opinion, and in fact, with results exhibited by that. They listened. They went to Nashville. They checked it out. Suggestions were made. They followed some of them. They maybe didn't follow some of them. And that helped build a career. That's kind of how Highway 101 was put together. Chuck Morris said, I'm going to put these musicians together.
Yeah. That there were many other country artists at Buddy Lee Attractions over the years that we did work with, sure.
Paul's referring to Buddy Lee Attractions in Nashville, one of those agencies on the famous Music Row. And there was a day when a guitar player came in with a bunch of songs, and the story has it, he'd brought a cassette from Tulsa and drug these cassettes up and down Music Row, and his last stop was at Buddy Lee. What happened there?
Well, this guy named Garth Brooks came in and met with a fella, one of the other agents there. I was not the initial contact, but a fella named Joe Harris, who, God rest his soul, he saw something in Garth that others didn't, just as Garth's longtime manager, Bob Doyle. Same thing. And there were many folks up and down Music Row who didn't take him seriously, or perhaps just didn't have the vision. And fortunately for those of us who did, it was an amazing ride.
I heard that was going to be his last stop on Music Row. And he was going to go home after that because it didn't work.
Well, I think the one where you say yes typically is your last stop. Or yes, well, that's good. Or when yes is said, yes.
Good point.
Yeah.
What happened was, I remember hearing the story recounted by other people that were there, is all the agents ended up in one office listening to this cowboy from Tulsa. They were taken away by him. Yeah. No record deal yet. What happened after that?
It was one of those things where, and Garth had a vision too. He knew exactly, in fact, Garth would talk about himself in the third person. And because it was almost like, this is a business. And he would talk about his career as such. And in fact, he said, man, I'm a 70s rock arena kind of guy. And he liked Billy Joel and Seeger and folks like that. And I think he took, pages out of their professional performance manual and integrated those into his live show to the point where Garth had the best live show in country music. And even the head of Capitol Records, Jimmy Bowen, made it a mandatory attendance for all of the other artists signed to Capitol Records to go see a Garth Brooks concert to just take it in and learn.
This is an example of, because often the question I get being a performer, and this is John McEuen on the Americana Music Show, talking to Paul Lohr at New Frontier Touring. Paul has been with many agencies and started from the ground up, and has had quite a successful and continuing successful career as an agent in show business out of Nashville. And one of the questions I get is, how do I make it? What do we do? And what I get from what you're saying is these people, especially Garth and others that we know, had a vision of their purpose, of what they wanted to do and where they were going and how they wanted to be. And does that seem to be the case, like with Garth?
Well, I mean, yes. And I'll temper that by saying that there is a one critical element, and that is the talent factor. Many people have the desire, the vision, but but fall short on the talent or the charisma.
The actual content.
Yeah, and that's one of those things too, where the rubber meets the road is: are you doing something that people will pay to see, and will continue to pay to see, and keep coming back for more? And the best way to do that is to get out there, throw the spaghetti against the wall, and see if it sticks. Hopefully, you'll be one of the fortunate few that can make it like that. I was kind of like me back when I was playing, and luckily I realized early enough that I didn't have that talent, and said, all right, it's kind of like those who can't teach. So those who couldn't make it as on the stage, it often ends up on the business side.
What's it like, briefly, on the business side, when you have, how many venues do you deal with?
A few thousand.
A few thousand venues. How many acts are there competing for those venues? Several thousand?
Several thousand easily, sure.
Yeah. And how many agents do you have?
We have 4 agents right now, and could use another 2.
And how many acts do you have?
35.
So you take Paul Lohr at New Frontier Touring, and some of these acts are quite good names. Hall & Oates is a known group. Paul represents John Oates, the central part of Hall & Oates, who goes out as a solo performer. Chris Hillman and Herb Peterson, well, Chris started the Byrds, and some people might call this an eclectic act, but together those guys have 50 years of music history, and they're great performers. Who else do you represent? Riders in the Sky, you basically discovered, and keep them going.
Yeah, America's favorite cowboys, the kings of comedy and western. Those guys have been doing it since, this is coming on 34 years. The Riders have been around, and I've worked with them for about 2/3 of that.
And you have a new act you've discovered that's burning it up. A lot of people never heard of the Avett Brothers. What was that like? Did you see them and know that was going to work?
Well, that was another interesting story. I actually passed on them 3 times. People kept coming back and just contacting me, and they would all say the same thing. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I just heard this artist that's incredibly compelling, and I just wanted you to know about it. And their manager had contacted me and had sent me a CD to listen to, and I made it through a couple of songs, but I was at the time I was more of my ears were tuned to what Nashville was and had been producing, which is a slick sound, and their sound was very rough, and it was an early record too. They were just learning how to make records, as any young act does, and has a growth curve to go through. And they all said the same thing: you got to see this band live. And months later, I happened to be at a Nashville weekly event called Billy Block's Western Beat Roots Revival, where he would have a showcase of 5 or 6 artists. And I was invited to see one artist, and didn't even realize that the Avett Brothers were, or maybe I did, but had forgotten about it, but they were playing after that artist. And was talking to the manager of the band after the first band I was invited to see, and was thanking him for it, but said, they were pleasant, but just, not compelling, and wasn't my cup of tea. And it was kind of like right in mid-sentence, the Avett Brothers started playing, and I stopped and I looked, and I don't know, it was just a really unique sound. It was different from what I'd heard on the record.
And the audience response?
Well, everyone was like, "Whoa!" Because they opened up with the bass player bowing the upright bass like a cellist would, and then the 2 guys were singing, and it was beautiful sibling harmony like the Everly Brothers. And I stopped and said, "Man, who are these guys?" And the guy said, "Oh, that's a group called the Avett Brothers." And I said, "No, that's not the Avett Brothers. The Avett Brothers that I heard, they're caterwauling and banging instruments and breaking strings and screaming and hollering." And he said, "No, I'm telling you, that's the Avett Brothers." And I said, "Really?" And I stopped and listened. And I turned to the guy and said, "Hey, nice meeting you." And walked over to find the brothers' manager. And sure enough, the next song they ripped into a string breaking, caterwauling, foot stomping, wild, frenetic tune. And I'm like, oh man, I get it now.
Well, you're like one of the secrets to the success, though, because they could be doing that still at the same level, and you saw them, and you've helped take them from club scene to what do they draw now?
Well, he sold out Red Rocks Amphitheater a couple months in advance this past summer.
9,000 seats in Denver, Colorado.
Sold out Radio City Music Hall, 5,800.
Oh, so 58.
Yeah. Yeah, Live Nation comped the other 400.
Yeah, I thought it was 62. Good for them.
No, it wasn't a Live Nation show. I'm just joking. Just a little joke.
The situation for the agency, so it's an obvious, necessary thing. My son is going through this right now, looking for an agent. Excuse me, I'm giving the pitch to the agent now, hoping good for them. What do somebody need to get attention? Because it's almost impossible to really make it in the music business maybe it is impossible by yourself. You have to have people.
Yeah.
So how does somebody get an agent? What advice can you give to somebody that might be listening? This is Paul Lohr we're listening to on the Americana Music Show. Paul's what I consider a major agent in the music scene in Nashville. And I'm looking forward to the answer to this question. How do you get an agent?
It's almost, I don't know if you get one or if they get you. I think that's the key. I think your champion has to get the artist. And they have to, it's two things. They have to be passionate about the artist that they want to represent, and they have to have the time. There's only so many hours in a day that in fact, that was a thing I learned. I got my degree in advertising, journalism, and it was great to sell newspaper advertising because, boy, you could add pages to a newspaper till you're blue in the face, but I couldn't, you can't add hours to a day, so there was only a limited inventory for radio or TV advertising. So I said, heck, I'm gonna sell newspaper ads. But it's the same thing. In the agent world, you only have so many hours in a day, so many calls you can make. Sure, you can, shotgun blast with emails, but where the rubber meets the road, it's the personal relationship and talking to that buyer. And an artist is going to be successful if they have, or not only if, but it helps if they have a champion who has the time to devote to them.
10,000 people trying to get jobs in 3,000 places. And some of the agencies have 20 people. Mm-hmm. Some mathematician has to come along here and just go, can't be done. Or how did that work?
Oh, I heard former head of Arista Records here in Nashville, Tim Dubois, talk at a panel one time, and he did the math, and I think he was using a country music analogy for how many hours in a day the radio can play songs and what the rotation is like, and how many people are trying to do it. And he says he figured out that you have a better shot at making it in the NBA than you did on country radio, at least numbers-wise.
No, don't say that.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration when they go, I want to be in the music business, is you can't work every day. You're not going to work January 3rd, most likely, or the day after Christmas, most likely, or the day after Memorial Day, unless it's also a holiday. And you start adding up these days. I'm sure you as an agent consider every day bookable. But
there was 1 month where I did book a sleep at the wheel, 29 out of 31 days.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I asked Ray Benson, I said, you want the 2 days off? He said, never. Book me.
But you might only have 250 days potential out of the year. Oh, I wonder what it is. I should figure that out by now.
Yeah, it's not, Easter week's not really that good a week to book shows.
Or Super Bowl day.
Super Bowl Sunday, you want to take that off, absolutely.
Well, another one to check off. And Halloween's not good.
Well, actually, we like Halloween.
Yeah?
I've booked the Avett Brothers here in Nashville. It's kind of become a tradition now.
Oh.
And, in fact, the fans come dressed up, and the Avets will come out as, each year it's something different. This past year they came out as mummies.
So it's show business. And then you're giving somebody, you're taking advantage of what could be a weakness.
Oh, for certain events, yeah. I always thought Groundhog Day would be great. I love that holiday, but no one else seems to think so.
Christmas shows are popular this last 10 years, more than ever.
Yeah.
So getting an agent, of course it would help if you have a record company and a manager and an accountant and an attorney. But then the agent would be coming after you if you had all these things. Is there any other secret or that you know? Is that just it? You have to find the person that has the time, that's looking for another act, that goes, I believe in that.
Yeah, from the artist standpoint, it's finding someone who believes in them. From the agent side, I tell them it's easy. Just go out and find a great friggin' act and sign them.
Huh. That you came on, I don't know if this is appropriate. It's my own show, and I'm one of your acts. Mm-hmm. But you're a person that's been through from managing the careers on the agent level of Garth Brooks, Dixie Chicks, Riders in the Sky, and many others, both with your own agency and prior to and during Buddy Lee attractions. Why did you want me? I don't have a hit record.
Well, when I was on the concert committee at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri, you played Jesse Auditorium.
Right.
And I saw that show and just blew me away.
Oh, my God.
And then afterwards, my buddy, one of my roommates, in fact, he was one of my picking buddies. We had a little college band there, the Thursday night club band. Anyway, he was there afterwards, and you may recall he was a Russian language studies guy, and you guys, the Dirt Man, had just gotten back from playing Russia.
Oh yeah,
and he talked to you about that experience. So anyway, that was probably the start of it, and how and I remember too that my next door neighbor, when The Circle Be Unbroken came out, he bought that album. Mm-hmm. And music, or at least recorded music, wasn't that big in my household growing up. My father played bagpipes. My mother played piano and played church piano, and they all encouraged us to play an instrument. In fact, not encouraged, it was mandatory. We don't care what instrument you play, but you are going to play an instrument and take lessons. But they weren't into popular music that much. So my friends, they were the ones who would always turn us on, and you'd be, hey, what'd you get this week? And I remember he said, oh man, I got this album, Will the Circle Be Unbroken? So that was probably
that might have helped
an element that.
So in a case for me,
mm-hmm.
I'm trying to tell people how difficult it is. I had to have a band, a history, a bunch of albums, my own albums, and you liked the act from previous times, and you went, yeah, I'll book this act. And I try to tell my boys or anybody who goes through that struggle of getting an agent, I said, look, I did this for 38, 39 years with the Dirt Band and booking myself solo until I finally found somebody I could believe in and trust on that side of the fence. So what is, just to go back to that again, because I know I get a lot of emails from people all over the country that say, we wish we had an agent. Is it fruitless? Is it useless to send CDs and press kits to agencies? Is there something, one thing that goes, oh, at least it isn't a pile of stuff, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I have more inquiries than I can respond to.
Inquiries for representation.
Sure, and which I'm grateful for. I try to listen to all of them. It may be a year before I get to them, but typically I'll just put the CDs in a box, and I do 99% of my listening in the car. Uh-huh. And when my wife and I will take a road trip or vacation or something like that, I'll say, all right, let's bring the box of CDs along. And
have you ever found anybody from that process?
I found one, yeah. I found a group, Danger Muffin. And
what a great name!
Yeah. And actually, the one of the members in the band was an acquaintance of ours from another artist that he had worked with. And for whatever reason, I just chose to listen to that last. And we drove from Nashville to Merlefest and back.
Yeah.
That's when we got to Danger Muffin, and it was just great CD. And it was such a relief, too, because we'd listened to a lot of bad music.
So how did you contact them? You called them up?
We
and
knew
said,
them, yeah.
Guess what? We like your stuff.
Yeah. And they said, well, of course you would.
And how's it working for them now?
Going well. You know, with any artist, it seems to be, or the time period it seems to develop any artist for, I don't know, this is just my observation, but it's about 7 years.
Yeah.
And you'll hear that in Nashville too. Even if someone comes to town, gets a job as a waiter, starts meeting people, starts writing songs, hooks up with the publisher, gets signed to a record deal, gets put in the witness protection program at the record label. Seems to be on the back burner forever. But it seems like after 7 years of working here in Nashville, that's finally when they get a single released. Well, without a record deal, just doing it the independent route, it seems that you can pay bills after a couple of years of touring, but you can't really get comfortable or raise a family.
Oh, that's out of the question.
Yeah, it's tough until there's at least a good 5, 6, 7 years invested.
Is there any book or books that you recommend for people that are going into this business of trying to be a road performer, which would rely on what you do? Anything that would help them?
Oh, I can't think of any off the top of my head, John. I'm sure there are.
I always recommend Songwriter's Guide to Music Publishing by Randy Poe, because I would assume most of the people you're interested in or would be interested in are doing original music. In fact, there's one right now.
There it is.
I get how hard it is to find an agent. How hard is it to become an agent? There's people that might be listening that go, man, I don't want to go on the road. So what would you recommend to somebody that wants to book people?
Well, start young. Because it's a lot easier to start when you're young than it is when you're older. Mm-hmm. And we make our living by charging 10% of what the artist makes. And if you're only booking an act that's making $200, $300 a night, that $20, $30 doesn't stretch very far.
Like if somebody goes, I want to book somebody in a bunch of clubs, is there a magazine or such?
Well,
do you use Polestar?
Oh, I subscribed to Polestar for many years. Polestar gives you lots of industry information, as does Billboard, Variety, but Polestar is pretty much the Bible of the touring industry.
That's Pollstar, one word. It's based in Fresno.
Yeah, Polestar.com.
Yeah.
A lot of people in fact, fans go to Polestar to look at artists' itineraries. I think they hook up with Jambase, don't they? Aren't those two links?
Oh, there's Jambase, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But to be an agent, I think you have to be a good salesperson. And you have to be able to hear the word no a lot.
Wow. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's that old story. The average salesman quits on the 7th call, and the average sale is made on the 8th.
That's a good line. Well, we've been talking with Paul Lohr on the Americana Music Show, and Paul's a highly respected agent in Nashville, and in my experience, he's one of the few agents that's liked by the acts, the buyers, and the other agencies and agents. Good relationships you have with everybody.
You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, John.
Yeah. Did you ever read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill?
I've not.
About Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People?
No.
I just wondered if you were that kind of guy.
There's a whole library of books that I haven't made it to yet, I guess because I've been too busy calling out.
How many hours a day do you spend? What are your hours? Are there hours?
Oh, in fact, now that I own my own company, in fact, I told my wife I wasn't planning on working quite this hard at my age. But, I get up in the morning and have the computer on while I'm eating breakfast, and you try to do your, home chores as well, and then I get into the office. So hopefully I can get in by 8. Just depends on what's going on, and then you go home. It seems like
Listening to CDs in the car on the way home.
Yeah.
Taking a phone call from an act that doesn't have food in the dressing room.
That kind of stuff. And typically work till 7:30. And then I tried to say, well, all right, I'm going to try to work from 8 to 6:30, and I'll just make up for it by working on Saturdays and Sundays. So,
So it's only about 70 hours a week. Or more?
I'm serious about the Saturdays and Sundays.
I know you are, because I've talked to you on Sunday before.
That's right. And I actually get a little peace and quiet. I just don't answer and the phone rings on Saturdays and Sundays here too. I I answer my cell phone, but I won't answer the landline on the weekends. But
good.
You got to put together your game plan for the upcoming week, and you need some time to do that.
Because besides the phone in the office in the business out of Nashville that's staffed by other agents, Paul goes out on the road to do the conventions, of which there's several a year, and then tries to come back and reap what you have sown.
Sure. And try to go out and see the shows on a lot of the artists. It's important to get out there and see the places and meet the folks that you're doing business with, and see the rooms where you're having your artists play. And sometimes you're pleasantly surprised. Sometimes you're shocked, and you go, oh my God, this is the place I've been booking those poor acts for the past 20 years. I'm surprised they haven't killed me by now. But
well, the money was good.
But the money's good, yeah. Sorry, I'll try to have the pool table moved from the front of the stage next time you're in there.
Well, Paul Lohr, New Frontier Touring. That's the website, New Frontier Touring. Check out their acts. And if you wanted to call Paul, it's number
615-321-6152.
And that's how you book somebody. I get that question a lot, And they don't know what an agent does or well, you find out that an agent helps the groups and the people that want to see them or put them on come together. And from my experience and his reputation, it's a good place to call. Check out the acts on New Frontier Touring, and we've been visiting with Paul Lohr on the Americana Music Show. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Let's talk about where those dates are.